Hey, kids, welcome to another exciting edition of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I am your host, Ian J. Malone, joined as always by my usual partners in crime. That would be Rob Howe, Kevin Steverson. Going to get to those fine folks here in just a second, plus a special guest talking some NFL football tonight, folks. It's back-to-back football time on Dudes in Hyperspace because, well, it is that season. Is it not? Is it not glorious? Are you not entertained? College football last episode, NFL tonight. It's beautiful. Freaking love this time of year. Before we go any further, got to say thanks to our presenting sponsors. That would, of course, be the fine folks at Chris Kennedy Publishing. We say it every week because it's true, guys. It doesn't matter what you're into, whether it's military, sci-fi, space opera, urban fantasy, high fantasy, paranormal romance. They got it all over at Chris Kennedy Publishing. Slide on over to their website, chriskennedypublishing.com. Read about their books, their authors, their series, you name it. Even sign up for their newsletter while you're there. Get yourself a free ebook because when gas prices are still through the roof, free ebooks are your friend. That is, again, chriskennedypublishing.com. Chris Kennedy Publishing, they are message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy. Brother Rob, how was your Labor Day, sir?
I actually did quite a bit of work over Labor Day. We've got a number of trips planned, so mostly I just stayed home and edited. A bunch of stuff going out from work.
All right, nice. Kev, how about you, man? Did you do anything for Labor Day weekend?
I did, about 50 wings.
My man.
Went barbecue, went buffalo, obviously, and then lemon pepper. Split them all up, got ready for the ball game there on Saturday. So
you had quite a bit to celebrate on Saturday with your Georgia Bulldogs. That was most impressive, sir. Impressive.
We beat Oregon like they stole something. You know what I mean?
I do indeed. Somewhere Phil Knight is crying in a little fetal position ball. It's beautiful. Makes my heart smile.
You completely ducked them up.
Oh, we had a nice mellow weekend, holiday weekend in the Malone house. Got a little bit of editing and some odds and ends done on Saturday, and then clocked out in time to do a little bit of grilling, watch some football, hang out, and then did the beach on Monday, which is always a good thing. So got to watch my Noles win a college football game against a major opponent in a while since I've been able to say that. So obviously that made me smile, and it was a good weekend. But speaking of football, we are obviously not here this evening to talk about college football. If you want our thoughts on that, go back and check the last episode with our guest, Joe DeLeon from the NFL Draft Prospects podcast. Had some great stuff there and some great insights looking into the season. A lot of those predictions came true in week 1 too. So great interview there. Go back and check that out with our man, Joe D. Tonight, though, we're talking football of the professional variety, that is. And we're not looking very far from my backyard to be able to do it. Joining us tonight on the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast is good guy, great producer. He is host of the afternoon Underdogs radio show right here on ESPN Northwest Florida. If ESPN Northwest Florida was a Ferrari, he is the engine.
I wonder if his internet went out because that was pretty.
So that is, of course, David Hayes. Welcome to Dudes in Hyperspace, man. How are you? Looks like Dave froze up on us.
I got to go. As soon as I clicked leave, and then it brought me back like, okay.
There you are.
You both froze up. You both froze up. That actually was a North Florida thing.
All right.
I was just fixing to launch into more Georgia stuff, too.
Yeah.
Save us.
Indeed. All righty. So we're not sure where all of that froze up. So I will start
backyard.
back with a wonderful
You're getting ready to introduce him.
Yeah, you're getting ready to introduce him. Just do the introduction over again.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes. I can hear you now. You froze up right after
David
backyard.
Hayes is the host and lead producer of the Afternoon Underdogs radio show on ESPN Northwest Florida. And if ESPN Northwest Florida was a Ferrari, he is the engine that makes it go really fast. He's that guy. David Hayes, welcome to Dudes in Hyperspace, man. How are you?
Man, I am fantastic. I wish I got paid like the engine of a Ferrari did. That was a great introduction, though, man. I appreciate it. You nailed it.
It would have been awesome had Zoom not crapped out on me, but it's Zoom. So, we do what we got to here.
It's so funny, too, because I was like, well, what should I do? I was about to, leave and then put in go back to my messenger, click the link, all that good stuff. As soon as I clicked leave, it came back on. I was like, okay, all right.
Nice.
We're good to go.
The football god smiled on our conversation.
Yes, sir.
So, well, thanks for joining us tonight, man. For those who are listening in from Panama City, obviously, you know, Dave very well, does a great job every afternoon from 4 to 6 right here on 104.3 FM. You can also catch those guys live streaming on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and via the web on their website, TuneIn Radio. Like, they're pretty much everywhere. If you want to check them out, links are in the comments along with Dave's information. So make sure you check those out and follow the show because it's great content. Tonight, we're talking about the NFL. Dave, this is obviously an area that's near and dear to you, football particularly, but especially the NFL. So, and I've really enjoyed the stuff you guys have had to say on the show about this, you know, in the last couple of weeks as we've started to ramp up coverage for the new year. Talk to me about the major storylines that you're looking at heading into 2022. Obviously, we've had a lot of stuff happen through the offseason with player movements and new rule stuff coming in. Been a lot happening. So talk to me about the major stories that you're looking at heading into 2022.
It's funny because when you say rule changes, the first thing that comes up, or at least thought in my mind, is what's going to go on with the taunting rule this year and all of that good stuff. But rules aside, first and foremost, as a fan, if you can't tell, guys, I'm wearing the Tennessee Titans, so tighten up. So as a fan, strictly from that standpoint, it's Derrick Henry's health, right? The guy was a monster a year ago, 2,000-yard season a year ago, is looking poised to lead the league in rushing again. And then all of a sudden you have the injury to the foot. Now we're talking about a 28-year-old running backs with one of the smallest shelf lives in the NFL as far as positional players go. And we're talking about a big guy as well. So can he stay healthy? That's the biggest issue for the Titans, because outside of that, you look at the core and what's been there. Harold Landry tears his ACL. So now you have that to look at from the defensive side. Is that rush going to be what people started seeing when some of the core was missing due to injury? So the biggest question for me as a fan is, how will Derrick Henry's health stand up? Will we be able to ride him continuously like what the plan was last year? Or is it going to have to be one of those, let's win it by committee, dig into the practice squad, find that Deontay Foreman, find that Dontrell Hilliard, put things together as we go and make it happen? Because obviously, as we saw, we get into the playoffs where the number 1 overall seed get that bye, play the Bengals, sack Joe Burrow 9 times, he gets up 10, they still win.
Right.
And so there's that question for me is Derrick Henry's health, because you get him back at the final playoff game of the year, or for us, the first playoff game of the year. You get him back for that game and you expect the chemistry just to be there. And obviously it wasn't. So just having the guy on the field and having end of the year in football shape, Derrick Henry, totally different worlds. Next for me is going to be Aaron Rodgers with the receivers. That's a storyline that I think me and most every other media outlet in the world is engaged in right now. How is Aaron Rodgers going to do without Devontae Adams? Now it's Robert Tonyan. Can you stay healthy for a year? Devontae Adams gone. So we need a wide receiver to step up. It can't just be from the tight end spot either. Is it going to be Lazard? Is Christian Watson going to come from North Dakota State and be a problem there? So for me, watching that storyline unfold, and we're going to get to see it right out of the gate in a great fashion against the Minnesota Vikings. So, you know, you got a lot of people out here picking the Vikings to win the North. We get to see Aaron Rodgers and how he rolls out with his new receiving core this year, right off the bat with the division opponent. And then the Bills as favorites.
Yeah. We've
seen them in Super Bowls before, 4 years in a row, when I really wasn't watching, but being able to go back and look through history, you know, the bad kicks for the Buffalo Bills. So now they're coming in as favorites. They're opening the season up against defending Super Bowl champs. Watching that storyline unfold for me during the season is going to be interesting, because we just got done talking about the Tennessee Titans as the number 1 seed last year. And a lot of people were saying weakest number 1 seed arguably ever in history out of the AFC. So the Bills get in this year. How are they perceived if they go wire to wire like that? That's going to be interesting to me, especially with a revamped Dolphins, a Ferrari. You talk about a Ferrari, what they've put around Tua there in Miami. That's a whole nother storyline. And then the Bengals.
We're going to get to Tua. So
yeah,
keep that card in your back pocket. But yeah,
and
we'll get there.
The final one is the Bengals. is that model sustainable? Will Joe Burrow's health stand up? For me, just watching the Bengals throughout the season, and that kind of runs into one of the other questions that you have later on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me on your Titans, and I'm sure this is not going to come as any late breaking news to me, it comes down to the quarterback position. And the NFL now is built on star quarterback play. And, you touched on the Bills there, and that is the difference in the Bills now versus the Bills of pretty much every other year when they didn't have Jim Kelly under center. Is now they got a baller there calling the shots. And that is what they have been missing for a very, very long time. I will say back on the note of the Titans, though, absolutely love the Malik Willis pick in the third round, man. I like that kid. I think he's raw, but I think if you can let him grow and learn before you shove him out into the fire, that might be a steal pick, man. And I hope so, because he seems like a neat kid. A lot of other things took place over the offseason. A lot of, and this is tradition now in the NFL, new faces going to new places. You talk about the quarterbacks, you talk about Russell Wilson going to Denver, you talk about Baker Mayfield to Carolina, some guy named Watson going to Cleveland. Don't know when he's going to play, if he's going to play this year, but that's a big move. Talk to me about who won the offseason in your opinion. And, are any of these moves a whole bunch of smoke and they're going to fall flat and blow up in some of these teams' faces? Who are the big winners and the big losers this offseason?
Winners, Dolphins, Eagles, Jets. For me, those are the winners of the offseason. Now, what happens with those after winning the offseason? That's a storyline in and of itself. When it comes to the losers, that's one that I haven't really thought about when it comes to the offseason. I think if you include preseason and training camp and all of that into offseason, which I typically don't, but the Buccaneers, just because of that offensive line, right? Thinking everything's in place. So if I'm lucky enough to get this late into the season and use that, then I'll go that way. Also, what's another big loser? That's such a tough one to put someone in the loser category.
Yeah. You could definitely make an argument that the Browns came up a little short.
I was going to suggest the Browns, and I'm also going to suggest the Seahawks.
Yeah.
The Seahawks. I mean,
the Seahawks here's my stance on the Seahawks, though, as far as a loser, is they were going to be losers this year, regardless of who their quarterback was, even with or without Russell Wilson. They're playing for the future. So Russell Wilson saw that and was like, it's time for me to get out of here. So that's why I just kind of, to me, they're in a sense, a throwaway team.
Well, I get that, but it's not simply the fact that Wilson's gone. It's the fact that the way they're handling the rebuild is, in my mind, inefficient.
Yeah.
And yes, they got a bunch of stuff for Wilson, and yes, they absolutely should have traded him. That's actually on their positive side. But, and this goes back to the Titans and Derrick Henry. They are, and this goes back to my team as well. I'm a Cowboys fan, and these teams are focusing on the running back. And these teams that do that, we live in an NFL where the single running back, the bell cow running back, literally, I don't think can survive 17 games on a regular basis. It may happen once or twice, but the impacts are so much. And if you're going to use them 300 touches in a season, they're just not going to be in that good shape to be able to power through the playoffs. And so that's still Pete Carroll's philosophy. And I think he has hamstrung his chance to rebuild that team in a different way. And that's why I think they're losers, not the trade it, but I think they're not only going to be so bad, they're not going to handle this, or I doubt they'll handle this in as efficient a way as I think they should.
Yeah. So I wonder if one of the plays there is to, I know this isn't going out on top, but Pete Carroll helps the Seahawks get a number 1 pick and then right off into the sunset.
It's a little conspiracy theorist, but we can roll with it.
Listen,
tinfoil hat on.
It's not too early to talk about who the Falcons going to pick number 1 in the draft. Okay, it is not too early for that.
You don't have.
But
faith
speaking
in
of that, I
Mariota?
just want to bring this up. I think it's going to be the 3rd year in a row this happens. A couple years ago, good team, no quarterback, Brady, they won. Last year, good team, no quarterback, they picked up a quarterback, they won. This year, watch the Colts.
Yeah, my man down here is
Because
all
now
in
they
on
have
some
Matt
Matt
Ryan.
Ryan in Indianapolis, man, big
And
time.
I have said for years, and I'm a Falcons fan, I've said for years, all those wide receivers did great in Atlanta, moved on to other places, nothing happened. Your team got one. You got Julio Jones. What happened with him? Who's the common denominator? It was Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Now Jones is down there second string in Tampa.
Oh,
A lot of
he's
people
gonna
think
he's
Matt
gonna make a
Ryan to
heck of a tight end
Indianapolis
down there.
was a lot of people think Matt Ryan to Indianapolis was a winner in the offseason.
Watch what the Colts do this year, and if they go to the Super Bowl, I'm telling you, that's 3 years in a row. Third team to do it.
I think your
Good team picks up a
philosophy.
great quarterback.
I think your philosophy is correct, but I actually think Wilson to Denver's more impressive because there's Judy, there's Cortland Sutton, there's and I'm blanking on it, but they've got
Tim
actually,
Patrick.
yeah, they've got a number of targets, and right now the only target that Ryan has is Pittman. Now Pittman's a good player, and he may be the best of all, better than any of the ones that we see in Denver, certainly in fantasy points because of target share. But I think Denver's got a chance to be a really potent offense this year with Wilson, because they've been, you said it, they built everything around it, and then all of a sudden they added a quarterback. Well, I think that's what's happening in Denver. And I'm sorry to steal your thunder, but we got off on this.
Oh yeah, no, man. This is a topic that if there is one that we can all go round robin on this show, the NFL is most definitely it in sports land anyway. Dave, I did want to get back to you real quick, man. We've talked a lot about players, impact players. You got anybody that you think is kind of on the cuff of having a breakout season this year? Like maybe they've been circling that orbit and this is the year they finally break through?
Well, a guy that I'm big on that's not been in the league before, and I can't be big on him so as much, is because groin injury, but Kenneth Walker, Seattle Seahawks running back, he was a guy that I was really excited about, especially fantasy wise, because for some reason the Seahawks can never get it figured out when it comes to one running back since Marshawn Lynch, basically. Yeah. Outside of that, a singular player that it's funny because I go to DeAndre Hopkins, and only because he's going to be missing the first 6 games. And so you're going to have a healthier DeAndre Hopkins later in the season, and it's going to give Kyler Murray a chance to build chemistry with the other receivers and maybe have that certain receiver be double covered. So DeAndre Hopkins coming off an injury early on, I like that aspect of it. In the same way with Julio Jones, in a sense, I wouldn't call them resurgent years by any stretch of the imagination, but because they can not have to produce like a star, it almost takes the weight off their back a little bit. And so I like that. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be a stud. One question mark would be Joe Mixon. I'm trying to go through some of the players like Hollywood Brown. He's a guy that some would think is going to take over that number 1 wide receiver spot in Arizona. So would he be a guy that could produce, that hasn't produced in the past? I'm almost inclined to say yes. I think him, and I think Christian Kirk, they not switch places, but you have Hollywood Brown with the Cardinals. I think him being for the first time in his NFL career in a pass first offense, or more of a passing offense than what it was with the Ravens, I think he's due to break out. And then Christian Kirk being a number 1 there in Jacksonville, Marvin Jones Jr. coming in, but he's a little bit in that Julio, DeAndre Hopkins type stage. I think Christian Kirk with Jacksonville is someone that a lot of people are overlooking. And then Carson Wentz with the Commanders, by kind of the opposite of Matt Ryan, but him being in an easier division, I almost want to see. I think he's got better receivers now. Running backs nowhere near as good, but in an easier division, in a sense, I almost want to see how Carson Wentz does with the Commanders.
The commies, go commies.
The commies.
We love the commies
Redskins
on this show.
And like I said last year when we got the name, I was trust the Washington franchise. Again, Dallas fan that despises the Washington franchise. Trust the Washington franchise to come up with a name so boring that they should have just stayed with football team.
Football team was much better than Commanders.
Oh yeah,
pretty much everything was better than Commanders.
They had a couple of good ones picked out. I mean, why not do the Washington Monuments at that point? Like, it's right there for you.
Yeah, no doubt. Phallic symbol and everything. Moving on. You mentioned we were talking about breakthrough players, and you mentioned Tua earlier. I think by all rights, everyone can agree this has got to be his year, man. You really got to break through. I, for one, am rooting for it. We've always had Dolphins blood in our house because half my family's from Miami. So even though I grew up a Bucks fan because they were awful and they had a bunch of Seminoles, there was lots of Miami love in our house because that was just kind of where we came from. I like Tua Tagovailoa a lot. I want him to be the franchise quarterback that they have not had since Dan freaking Marino. You go out, you get him a Tyreek Hill. The deck seems to be stacked in favor of them being really good this year. What are your expectations for the Dolphins? And do you believe Tua has that gear? And I'm going to need you to take your Alabama hat off for just a second and be objective about this because I know he's your boy.
So that's what I was going to say. When you say have that gear, I believe that he has the gear of talent. The problem has always been and will always be, I'm afraid, same way we just got done talking about Derrick Henry. That's not been a problematic thing over the ages, but that's from the beginning. I remember when Kyle Wright used to do the show with us, and I would always tell him, I just don't think he's going to be that great of a quarterback at the NFL level, not because of his talent, because he can sling it accurately with the best of them. But staying on the field is the most important thing, and we've never been able to see him do that. So when you can't do that at the college level, yes, you're playing SEC, but you can't do it against SEC. Then you get to the NFL. Now we're talking a whole nother level where every single player is a freak athlete. I'm hoping the best for Tua. Now, injuries, that's going to be the biggest issue, but where do injuries kind of stem from? Bad offensive line. Dumb mistakes sometimes, but bad offensive line. So they've revamped that offensive line. I'm going to say that this year the Dolphins surprise people and maybe not win the AFC East, but I think they finish above the Patriots. So depending on how those 3 wild card spots shake out, I say the Dolphins make the playoffs.
I can actually agree with that. That last comment, especially. It is not out of the question in my mind that the Patriots finish last in that division.
Ooh, all the way last?
Because we talked about how much the Jets did. I mean, Sauce Gardner looks like the real deal. Yeah. Breece Hall was a nice pick. If Wilson is healthy, or if Wilson can play for enough of the season, or is he out for the entire season?
No, he might even be coming back for week 1.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got another player confused in my head, but they had a useful set of players around that. I mean, Berrios is a nice little utility guy, and they've got some other talent there. They put some investment in the offensive line, so I don't anticipate them being a playoff team, but 8-9 is probably my guess. And if they're 8-9 and the Dolphins are 9-8 and the Bills say are 12-5, then suddenly we're looking at where do the Patriots fit in that? And I don't see them necessarily getting 10 wins this year. There's just too many questions, and sooner or later, Bill Belichick's drafting, or lack thereof in many ways, is going to catch up to him.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Sarah, is there any magic left in the tank for Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, or is that ship set sail?
Man, it's almost tough trying to give my prediction on a guy who's twice as old as me. And not literally, but close enough there to be able
my
to
age, man. Be careful.
No, but seriously, it's just like, to put my thumb on it, at this point is so far out the window. Let's just see. I think the offensive line is going to be the caveat to how it all shakes out. If you're giving me a healthy offensive line, even without the center,
Ryan Jensen.
Yeah, Ryan Jensen. But just say everyone's healthy and you've got a decent offensive line. The fact of the matter is he's putting up better numbers now than he was when he was with New England because he has more freedom. I'm not gonna say no against Tom Brady anymore after the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl. Or no. The Falcons Super Bowl. I was gonna say, and I was like, why that? Because Malcolm Butler picked that off. No, after the Falcons Super Bowl, coming back from 28-23, that man does what he wants, and he'll yeah. I mean, he already got us once this year. Why let him get me again?
True that. Rob, you got a read on that, man. Brady and the Bucks. Is that done, or you think they got one last run left in them?
So here's the thing. I think David hit it right on the head, because let's remember that the Saints have a really good defensive line, and let's remember that yeah, they've got the Falcons and the Panthers, and those aren't great, but the Panthers have some stuff on the defensive line too, and frankly, you can disturb Brady if you get consistent pressure in his face, not necessarily off the edges, but in his face. Also, I will say this: to win a Super Bowl in this day and age requires a significant amount of luck, injury luck, timing of the injuries, just the way everything breaks down, a few bounces here and there. This is not to say they're not great teams that win the Super Bowl. That's not at all. It's just that to get to that level, to get to the point where you're in the championship game, or you're in that level, you need a lot of things to go your way. And there are enough question marks on the Buccaneers with age, the offensive line, some other injuries, like their wide receiver core is good. It could be great, but is Godwin going to play up to it? You know, is Julio actually got anything left? All these sorts of questions. It's everything has to go right. And if everything goes right, and if the surrounding, if Tom Brady isn't hamstrung by everything that's around him, then oh yeah. But gotcha. It's like what David said. We've got to see what the offensive line does, and there's going to be some breakdowns over the year, especially if one or two more pieces goes away.
I almost want to ask, what do you think runs Brady out of the NFL first? Him being hamstrung and not being able to have the pieces he needs to know that he can compete, or winning one more and kind of riding off into the sunset?
I think the former. He is a guy that is smart enough to understand a lot of what Rob just said about surrounding cast.
He's way smarter than I am.
And I think that, Brady, if Brady looks up and says, okay, we are fine, we are officially too long in the tooth in Tampa Bay. We are not going to compete. Someone else has supplanted us here. And I'm looking around the league at the various, openings, and all of the teams that appear to be locked and loaded to make a title run have marquee quarterbacks already under center. There's no place for me. I'm going to end up in a second tier team. I think if he was 38, he'd still make a run at the B team, thinking that he could put them over the top. At this age, will be 46, 47 years old. I think he calls it a day at that point. I think this is his last hurrah.
I think you're probably right. I will also say this: we'll know a lot more of the answer of your question, David, on Sunday night.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing I love about this Cowboys defense, it's the defensive line depth, and that's not even counting Micah Parsons, and it's not even counting Barr, who did some of that too. So I suspect we're going to see that offensive line dealing with a ton of issues, and we'll know if a lot more on Sunday evening.
Well, one thing about Tampa is they have Julio Jones, and because he's not necessarily the starter, he doesn't have that pressure on him. And so when he comes in for his plays, he's going to be the Julio of old. And the reason I say that is because he doesn't have to spend 5 plays previous setting up that defender for that one pass he's going to catch that does something outrageous. Sure. He's well rested on a bench while somebody else does that. Yep. And then he steps in and he'll be Julio. And it may be 3, 4, 5 passes a game, but when he catches 5 passes and he's got 114 yards and 2 TDs, that's Julio.
Yep. Yeah, I liked the Julio Jones signing for that reason, because you didn't need to bring him in to be a star. Right. You could bring him in to be a role player, much in the way that they did Leonard Fournette when they brought him in. Mm-hmm. They knew he was going to be splitting time with Rojo, and they worked it out, and nobody says no to Tom Brady, and away you go. So no, I liked that signing. Dave, I do want to kind of stick in our broadcast space here and keep it in the state. Jacksonville obviously enters year 1 in Doug Peterson and the Doug Peterson era. Year 2 with Trevor Lawrence. I think we can all agree that Trevor Lawrence deserves a total pass for year 1, given Urban Meyer. What can we reasonably expect out of Jacksonville in year 1 with Doug Peterson? Has this got to be a year that Trevor really shows some growth? What needs to happen there in your mind to make that a success and show Jags fans that finally we're on the path to being decent?
I think he gets, like you said, Ian, he gets the pass. So I don't think there's going to be any judgment thrown upon him. Now, I guess the one caveat is the plethora of good quarterbacks in this year's draft. So if Jacksonville feels like, well, 2024 doesn't look so bright and Trevor, only got us 2 wins, then okay, but I don't know. I'm a guy who thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be a bust. Saw what he did last year, especially, the last 2 weeks of Urban's tenure there and from then on. And to win that game week 18, it was in Jacksonville, but against the Indianapolis Colts. And basically, I know Carson Wentz kind of handed that to them on a silver platter, but you still got that W there against a playoff contending team. I was a guy who called him a bust. I think that he's got what it takes to be in this league. Now you pair him with a guy, speaking of Carson Wentz, who brought Carson Wentz and Nick Foles to the Super Bowl. And well, I don't want to say he brought them there, but he led them there as being a coach. And they get the win over the New England Patriots. I mean, I'm not saying have Super Bowl expectations or even playoff expectations, but I would be surprised if people aren't surprised that Jacksonville is fighting for the AFC South up until, say, week 13 or 14. And it would be even surprising that they're in the race at that point in time. So to me, I think that Jacksonville is going to surprise a lot of people this year based on the efforts of Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne making him a little bit comfortable, and then he also gives James Robinson the breather there. So I think Jacksonville could be a surprise team because there are all these expectations that the AFC South is a 2-horse race and a 2-horse race only. Jacksonville might have something to say about that. I hope they don't.
Right.
But I'm saying they've got a quarterback there and a coaching system who cares, and it's not about me. It's not about Doug here like it was when Urban was there. It's about Urban Meyer and what we do. Let's bring in Tim Tebow. Let's nostalgic feeling about, so people focus on Urban Meyer. With Doug, I think it's about what is this team going to do? And I wouldn't be surprised if they're winning 6 games. 6 games for me, I think if you're a Jags fan, you get 6 wins, that's fantastic. Let's move on to the next year.
That's a great year if you're a Jacksonville fan. Yeah,
I think that's the floor.
Yeah, I
really?
think Trevor Lawrence is really good. I think he's good, and
I'm right there with Kevin. I think that's the floor. I think your suggestion that they're going to be in the playoff hunt in week 13, week 14, I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the playoff hunt a couple weeks later. I don't think they're going to win the division. I mean, but if it happens, I wouldn't be like, where the hell did this come from? We often have a worst to first, and that's kind of the right kind of team to do that.
I see them playing 500 ball or better.
I see 8 and 9, something like that. If they're 6 and 11, I think that's a disappointing year from my perspective of what they've accrued. But that's also
there'll be some close games in those 11 if that's the case.
And I will also say this: Peterson is an actual NFL coach, as opposed to Urban Meyer, and we absolutely have to give that pass. And I think that not only did Meyer stunt the growth of Lawrence, I think he did of every one of those players. And that's a young team. That was a young team to begin with. It's still a young team. I think Meyer was as much of a problem as anything.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, you can look at some of the comments coming out of Jacksonville, even from freaking Tony Khan himself, and see just how toxic that was from the jump. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That topic has been talked out. We all know Urban Meyer is a complete piece of crap, and someday soon he'll be back in college football. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, moving along. I wish you guys to be correct. I really, really do. I'm not a Jags fan, but I have a soft spot for the city of Jacksonville. And God, if there's a fan base out there that deserves to win some games and not have everybody in the world laughing at them, it's Jaguars fans. So I hope it works out. Somewhere Sammy Kavaris is smiling at that take.
Yeah, no doubt.
Want to move on to Atlanta real quick, and this kind of wraps up our little regional tour here. What can fans expect from the Falcons year 2 under Arthur Smith?
Absolutely nothing.
I'm a Falcons fan, and what I'm going for is first pick in the draft.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you might as well fight for it. I mean, I root for Marcus Mariota. I think he's a great guy. I wouldn't be surprised if Desmond Ridder is one of the first rookie quarterbacks actually starting, just because of the injury concerns there with Marcus already as it is. And then you've heard great things about him being a leader, but there's, a difference in being a leader and being a great quarterback who is a leader. We got him for a while, didn't work out, and he's been behind Derek Carr. Maybe that could be that, give him the chip on his shoulder that he didn't have before, because it's a guy who's been talked about so nicely by the media. He was in the Heisman running, if I'm not mistaken, I think he won one as well, battling with Jameis Winston. I don't know if they flip-flop years or if I'm just mistaken their Heisman race between the two of them. And then the way they got drafted 1 and 2, but yeah, nothing there. I mean, wide receivers, you lost the best wide receiver that you guys have outside of Kyle Pitts, who's a tight end, but is what, Alameus Zacchaeus or something like that,
Right.
A guy whose name I can't really pronounce. I think that you're going to get some fantasy points out of some of those guys down the road. Cordell Patterson, can he back it up? But I mean, when you're talking wins and losses, I think that if you're a Falcons fan and you see 4, if you go 4-13, you should be happy as hell.
Yeah, I don't want 4, because I might as well want the first pick in next year's draft. Damn
yeah. No doubt. I would much rather have the first pick.
Yeah.
Well, let's as we're starting to kind of wind down our time here, let's kick back to the good times, man. A lot of good divisional fights coming up this year. I think a lot of people are really interested to see what's going to happen out in the NFC West. Trey Lance is officially the guy in San Francisco now. What's that going to mean for the Rams? A lot of chatter around Arizona this offseason with Kyler Murray. You looked at the Central, you said it earlier. A lot of people think that Minnesota, that it's finally time that they take a step forward with Kirk Cousins. What's Denver going to be with Russell Wilson under center, the AFC East with the revamped Jets, the Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins. There are not a lot of divisions in the NFL this year that you would say, well, that's a lock. That team's going to walk away with that one and that's done. What divisions really have your eyebrows up heading into this year that you're thinking, man, that's going to be a fight to the finish?
Numero uno, number 1, straight off the chopping block, is the AFC West. I think everyone can agree that that is the one that everyone's going to have their eyes on.
Yeah.
I think I'm still on the side when it comes to the AFC South that's pretty much a 2-horse race. I'll go to the NFC West and I'll say that's a 2-horse race. Unless Jimmy G becomes quarterback again, then you're talking about 3 teams, and the Niners, the Cardinals, and the Rams who can really compete. I don't have the Seahawks anywhere near there. Sure. When it comes to the AFC North, I think that one is extremely compelling because, like I said, can the Bengals back up what they did last year with another repeat season? They have the talent there, but like my man Rob said, luck has so much to do with these games that's its own storyline to watch. Like, does it fall the same? Do the dominoes fall the same way? And I believe that they don't this year. I don't see the Bengals getting back to the playoffs. Lamar Jackson is the only weapon in Baltimore. I think Pittsburgh wins the AFC North. So I think that one is something for me to really watch. I think the AFC North, the AFC West, extremely compelling. I think that the AFC East has a tinge of it there. The NFC West, pretty much 2-horse race. Like I said, NFC South, not very compelling, but defensively, when it comes to the Saints, they could be really good. Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu could be one of the best defensive backfields in the NFL in the tandem together. So NFC East, Whoa, that one, that one is interesting every year, regardless, right? Because you could win the division with 7 wins, 8 wins. So I think it's compelling because you have America's team, you have the Eagles now who have booted up to, Miami Dolphins, if you will, and Carson Wentz with the Commanders. I think that one's going so far under the radar. And then the Giants, which I've got them in about the same tier as the Falcons right now, where if you're winning 4 games, you should be standing on your head and clapping your feet.
Yeah, I think Daniel Jones is going to be holding a clipboard somewhere next year myself, not in New York. Agree with that. I want to circle back to Pittsburgh real quick. Now, that's interesting. So you see the Steelers taking that division. Who's under center at quarterback by year's end for that? Is that Trubisky or is that
by
Pickett?
year's end? See, that's so the Steelers win the division if Trubisky is the quarterback all year long. If they go to Pickett, right, something's going Ari, and that's why they've got to go to Kenny Pickett. So if Pickett ends up being the quarterback, you could see that early just because he's a Pittsburgh boy. And if Coach Tomlin doesn't believe in Trubisky, I think that you could see that by week 6.
Okay.
But if not, if Trubisky is the starter, week 18, the Pittsburgh Steelers have won the AFC North.
Nice. All righty, man. Well, I'm going to pin you down one more time here. Give me your Super Bowl teams. I want AFC and NFC representatives, and I want a winner.
Here's the beauty of doing a show 5 days a week. A lot of people are listening on certain days, so you can kind of change it up every single day and just be like, you know what? I've got these guys. You're putting me in a corner. It's a coffin kick here. All right. So I'll say out of the AFC, give me the Chargers.
Okay.
Out of the NFC, this one's tough, but I would love to go Tampa Bay. I don't think that it's sustainable there in NFC or to come out of the NFC. I would love to say Minnesota as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go crazy on this one. All right. And if this happens, we need to go back to the future. Let me go Packers and Chargers.
Oh, all right. So Aaron Rodgers
one
makes do with that wide receiving core after all.
Yeah, because no one thinks he can do it, which normally it's like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is going to do it this year. Aaron Rodgers is going to do it this year. And then all of a sudden, now everyone's counting him out. You might just count. It's a lot easier to have a great quarterback and okay receivers and come away with something than it is to have great receivers and an all right quarterback and see what happens from there.
Gotcha. And he has developed quite a few receivers over the years,
turned them
up a notch or 8 throughout his career.
Rob, I'm going to throw to you real quick, man. Super Bowl picks. You want to take a crack at
that? So I really, really, really like what Kansas City did this year. Their draft, getting Karlaftis at the end of the draft, and some of the other players that they got. I don't see a weakness on that team, really. I mean, I see some weaknesses in depth in their defensive backfield and their linebacker core, but they've got somebody there in all of that, even with Tyrann Mathieu gone. I think they're going to crawl out and not be I think they're going to be a 3 seed because of the stupidity of the AFC West. But I think they'll come out as a 3 seed and they'll win, and that they'll defeat Buffalo again in the title game. I think Buffalo is the 1 seed because I think they do have the easier path. In the NFC, boy, I think we have to look at San Francisco. I'm a big believer in Trey Lance. I think actually he'll be something. I think he'll have some hiccups at the start, but I think that he'll start rolling in at the end of the year. And that team has got a bunch of other things. Mm-hmm. But like you were talking about, David, there's so many possibilities because any one of what we would consider the top teams, they pick the 2 top teams in each division, and Dallas or Philly. I actually think Dallas is going to win that because Dak Prescott's better than Jalen Hurts. That's my main reasoning there. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to in Minnesota. I think Minnesota has a little bit more talent, and so I think that's going to go to the edge. I think whichever one of the the NFC West teams does better in their division is going to come out with the 1 seed. I think Tampa's probably going to win that division, but I don't see anybody beating the NFC West team, to be honest. And I'm going to go with I think San Francisco is a little bit better than the Rams are this year, so I'm going to go with San Francisco versus Kansas City. And of those two teams, I think the AFC is loaded compared to the NFC this year in general. I think whoever comes out of the AFC wins the Super Bowl.
I do too. Kev, how about you, man? You want to take a stab at Super Bowl picks?
Yeah, I'm thinking Colts versus 49ers.
Okay. All right. And obviously you're rolling with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I just think that whole, it worked 2 years in a row. I think it's going to continue. It's a trend. If you got a good team, you get a great quarterback. And there's a couple teams that did get a great quarterback. I'm just going to stick with Matt because I think he was underappreciated his years in Atlanta.
I love that. And it, like you said, it's following a blueprint that led teams somewhere. So you're 100%. I love that take.
Yep. I'm going to go with Brady and the Buckies. I think they have one last gas to get there. However, I do think they're going to fall, and I would say most likely to the Buffalo Bills. Ooh. I think this is the year the Bills finally get it done, man. And I watched all 4 of those Super Bowl losses. I even owned a Jim Kelly jersey because I loved freaking watching the K-Gun offense.
Yeah.
But I really, Bills Mafia, man, I've watched it rise and rise and rise. And I think this is the year it finally happens, in large part because I really believe in that defense. And I really believe in Josh Allen. And I wouldn't have said that when he came out of college. I'm not typically very high on the small school guys.
Yeah.
He's made a believer out of me, man. He really, really has.
Josh Allen did something that is almost unheard of. Most of the time, quarterbacks coming out of college, if they have accuracy problems, their accuracy problems rarely get fixed throughout their career. They always have real problems. And that was the big knock on Allen. And so that was why I was thinking Allen wouldn't succeed. But he has greatly improved his accuracy, and I think a lot of that's because of his footwork has just gotten so much better.
Yep.
And it's worth noting because it's such an incredibly rare thing for that to happen. And also, I want to say this: having watched all 4 of those Super Bowls as well, because I'm older than I'm, in my 50s. I'm even older than Brady. I feel really bad that Norwood missed that kick, if only because getting to 4 Super Bowls in that day and age was an amazing accomplishment.
Yep.
That gets lost in the weeds because they didn't win a single one of them. That team was so good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I don't think they get the recognition that they should get because of wide right.
Little known tip here, Dave, and you can probably appreciate this. In 1992, when Florida State rolled out a undersized small fry quarterback named Charlie Ward and tried to run him under center for most of that year, and they promptly sucked, they went to Atlanta, got down big against Georgia Tech, and inevitably had to go to the shotgun because they were so far behind on the scoreboard. They figured out when they put Charlie Ward in a no-huddle offense in the shotgun, dude could shred. They ran it the rest of the season. And then that offseason, they flew their coaching staff to Buffalo to meet with Marv Levy and the Bills to study the K-gun. And that is what got you the 93 offense and Florida State's first national championship.
Wow. What a tidbit of information that
Fun,
is. I love that.
Yeah. All righty, dude. Well, actually, there was one more question I did want to ask you before I let you go. And this doesn't have anything to do with NFL football. It's just something that's kind of near and dear to me as an ex-radio guy. One of the things, guys, that I love about ESPN Northwest Florida is they pride themselves on being live and local. You hear it all over your sweepers. You hear it all over your imaging. And I really appreciate that because it's just so easy to go national programming all the time. And I still believe there's a place for local radio, local news, local weather, local information about what's happening in your community. You're not going to get that on Spotify. You're not going to get that on iTunes or, Pandora or what have you. Local radio can still bring that. And you guys really, that is a very much in the DNA of ESPN Northwest Florida. So talk to me real quick before I let you out of here on why that is and what it is that, you guys really wear that with a badge of honor. So just talk to me a little bit about why that means so much to you as a station.
Oh man, when you sent me this question, I was like, whoa, that is a tough question to answer because a lot of the times you just, for me being young to radio, it's one of the hardest things to actually get information on, which is wild, right? Because you pick up your phone and you have access to everything in the world. Whereas the stuff that's happening, as they say, in your own backyard is the toughest stuff to find. So it's always been a point for us to do that. Just one, if you're going to say you're going to be a part of the community, then be a part of the community. So I think there's that aspect of it. And just to shine a light on the athletic, I mean, Bay County athletics is absolutely amazing. And it's, like I said, it's tough trying to get all pieces of information in, especially when you're talking about a 2-hour radio show, and stuff that's hard to kind of find. But being local is extremely important to just being a part of something, because if I'm taking the place of a national guy and only talking national stuff, then what's the point if I can't give you something that really pertains to you in a different sense? So I'm kind of lucky in the sense of the show that I do run. We have that availability to kind of get on the broad topics, but to get specifics, and now calling Mosley football as well, to keep the stuff, or to get pieces of information that not everybody knows already, or that you don't get the newspaper anymore. And the newspaper is not even covering, our own news herald here is not covering local sports the same way anymore. So it's even tougher to kind of get that information. You have to be on Max Prep, Score Stream, talking with the coaches, ADs, and all that good stuff. So it's important, because the people who are listening are the most important, and that's what it comes down to.
Cool deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he is David Hayes. He is the host of the Afternoon Underdogs radio show. You can find him every day from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Northwest Florida. For those of us down here, that is 104.3 on the FM dial. For you folks listening wherever you are, they are online, man. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, they live stream every day. You can also catch them via the website at espnpc.com. All of that information is in the show links. You can also follow David on Twitter. So if you want to shoot him a question, he's really active over there. He answers questions and talks with listeners. So go find him over there. Dave, really appreciate you coming on board, man. It's always a pleasure, and we will hook up sometime soon and do lunch.
I love it, man. Cannot wait to get another Euro. Dudes in Hyperspace. It was fun.
All right, Dave, take it easy, brother. Thanks
for coming on, man. It was
Later,
great talk.
Guys. Yes, sir.
And that's going to bring us down to our halftime segment, which is where we talk about the latest happenings around Chris Kennedy Publishing, new releases, new stuff happening in audio, new podcasts, as it were. Good stuff, man. Rob, talk to me about new releases this week, man. What's happening in the world of New Mythology Press?
The Elemental Coven by Kayla Krantz.
Can I just say before you read the description on that, the covers lately coming out of New Mythology, and particularly for this series, are flat awesome, dude. Like, I love covers that really pop with a lot of color, and these have been flat gorgeous.
Well, I appreciate that. And we've got some great cover artists. Talk about Jake, who has done a lot of covers for us. We keep adding new ones. We're lucky. We get some good artists who want to work and want to do good stuff. So yeah, totally agree. This is, but back to Kayla's book. This is book 2 in her Witch's Ambition series. This is called The Elemental Coven. Held by the enemy in a land far, far away, the land of 5 is being systematically torn apart by war, and which Lilith Lace has a number of problems. First, having been captured in the Battle of Ignis by the Elemental Coven, she's now being held, well, she really has no idea where, so getting back home again is going to be hard, if not outright impossible, especially since she has to cope with the deaths of everyone she's ever loved while being held captive. Unable to decide between escape and giving up completely, Lilith is presented with a new challenge when she learns that the infamous rogue witch, Willow, is not only alive and well, but played a larger role in Lilith's childhood accident than she ever imagined. Everything Lilith has ever known is in flux. Friends are becoming enemies, enemies becoming friends. Will Lilith finally get to the bottom of her past among the ranks of the Elemental Coven, or will she instead get hurt worse than anything she's encountered so far?
Awesome. We got another new release in CKP land this week, and that would come to us in the form of The Ghosts of Zytopec from James Tarr. Hopefully I pronounced Zytopec properly. James, you can throw rocks at me later if I didn't. This is book 3 in the Echoes of Pangea series, so make sure you go check that out. As always, links for this and Elemental Coven will be right there in your show notes. So go check them both out. New stuff happening in audio. That is going to come to us from P.A. Pyatt. And this is Uncivil War. That is book 7 of the Abner Fortis ISMC series, which is hot as a freaking firecracker right now at CKP. For those who love the military sci-fi stuff, holy crap. If you're not on Abner Fortis, like, what are you doing here?
Oh, it's doing well overseas too.
Yeah. So other news happening for those who are looking for some bargain reads this week, we've got those for you also in the form of the Echoes of Pangea series. Book 1 in that is called Bestiary. And that's again by James Tarr. That is $1 this week only, for this week only. So if you want to get into this series, apparently it's like Jurassic Park, but like gobs better. Go check it out. Again, this week only. Book 1 in that series, Bestiary from James Tarr, is $1. Also wanted to mention, for those who have been living under a rock, Shark Flight Media has taken over production duties on the CKP Future Books podcast with Randall Willis. It has been so good to have Randy back in the fold. Randy is an avid reader. Randy is a guy who really gets into the minutia of story when he reads. He's very analytical about it. And that means he asks some great questions in his author interviews. So if you're into Chris Kennedy Publishing, Future Books is really a show you need to be checking out, because every month Randy runs down the monthly slate of what's going to be coming, that month with Chris. And then he'll interview a spotlight author for that month. And it's always really, really, really riveting stuff. So again, go, you can catch it on the CKP YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects for audio, and check that out. That is the CKP Future Books podcast with your host, Randall Willis. So, all right, well, that's going to take us down to our Air It Out segment, which is pretty well where we just kind of riff off on whatever we feel like, guys. It can be book-related stuff. It can be non-book related stuff. It's entirely up to you guys. So, Kev, I'm actually going to give you first run on this one, man. You got anything you want to rap about on Air It Out tonight?
Well, I mean, obviously everybody saw the football this weekend. So, I mean, Georgia's back, even though we gave up 15 to the draft to the NFL. It's going to be another good season. But speaking of my teams, my Braves are they're smoking it right now.
They are smoking.
We got a couple of the best relievers, in the game. I mean, not relievers, starters in the game. One just had 16 strikeouts the other day, and he's sporting a 1934 mustache straight off a dang black and white baseball card. So you got to love that. But yeah, it's looking good for all my teams. My Falcons got a great shot at the number 1 pick in the draft, so that's good. Yeah, life's good. Nice.
Rob, how about you, man? What's happening in the world of Hal these days?
Man, September is incredible for me. Today's a book birthday for me. No Game for Nights, which is an anthology done by Casey Azell and Larry Correia, which is noir sort of speculative fiction mashup. It includes Larry, Casey, Laurel K. Hamilton, Robert Butner, Griffin Barber, Dave Butler. Oh yeah, Chris Kennedy. Scott Huggins, also part of the crew. I mean, it's Nicole Givens Kurtz is amazing if you haven't read her. Incredibly talented lineup there, and I get to be one of them. And that came out today, and it's got its orange tag, so I'm really pleased about that.
Nice.
Next Tuesday, or today, we had one new mythology thing in Kayla. Next Tuesday, we have another one coming out. We have the next Eldros Legacy novel, The Pain Bear by Kendra Merritt. And I think this is my favorite of all of the first 8 novels, including my own. This is my favorite one to read. Right after that, the day that comes out, I'm actually skipping town because I'm headed south to Dallas to go to FenCon, which I am really looking forward to participating. Larry will be there. Larry Correia will be there. He's the guest of honor, and a bunch of other great authors. Mark Wandry will be there. William Allen Webb from CKP as well. Rob Hampson, another Four Horsemen Universe author, is going to be there. So that's going to be great. Then later on in the month, or then on that weekend, is also the Valkyrie Initiative, which is the anthology edited by Marisa Wolf.
A lot of
But I
buzz
also,
on that one.
yeah,
A lot of buzz on that one.
I have a story in there as well that I got to write a Valkyrie, a Norse Valkyrie, as basically a hardboiled private eye in St. Louis in today's age. So that was a lot of fun, and so that's going to be a hell of a weekend. And then after that, we have a release by Chris Nuttall, who is one of my favorite middle sci-fi and fantasy writers. New Mythology gets to publish him as well at the end of the month. So, I mean, I am so stoked about how awesome September is. I really just can't. And of course, football season. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, man, I'm really ready for some of the Hit World stuff to drop on audio. Like I'm chomping at the bit at that one. I hear everybody talk about Hit World, and I'm like, dude, this sounds freaking awesome.
You know, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, reading the Bible and what he wants to, I've been calling it genre gumbo, and it's basically William Allen Webb has said, you want to do it? Great, do it. It's got aliens, it's got magic, it's got mythologies, it's got James Bond style assassinations and techno thriller, and I mean it's basically like they took every role-playing game out there, like every one of the GURPS way back when, and threw it all into one thing and said go. It's a hoot, and I'm really pleased I get to contribute to the Valkyries Initiative. It's a lot of fun.
Sweet. Well, we're rolling along here in September. We've got some family stuff happening this month, which is going to be big time. So I always look forward to spending time with those folks. I mentioned this on a previous podcast. One of the things I really set out to try and do in 2022 is to take a little bit more advantage of local opportunities to spread book news and author brand and all that kind of stuff. You know, we talk a lot on this show about doing conventions or, going and traveling to all these different places. And we love those trips, but have no illusions, folks. That stuff costs a good chunk of change, man. It really, really does. And so really kind of one of my missions this year has been to look around and find the smaller stuff that's right here in my backyard that I can take advantage of. And fortunately for me, actually, Bay County Public Library does a ton of stuff. And I actually would like to get their outreach director on this show at some point to talk about really the need that local libraries have for authors like us. We have a lot of other authors who watch and listen to this show. And what I would tell you is, your local library, a lot of times those folks are looking for programming. Like libraries are struggling to stay relevant in the modern era, just like everybody else is. And they are looking for people to partner with for events. They want authors to come down and talk to readers about, hey, I write books, I write stories, here's what I do. And yeah, I mean, they're not going to pay you to do it, but you're putting your stuff in front of readers right there in your backyard. So take advantage of that. So anyway, I'd like to get Sarah on the program at some point to kind of talk about that in a little bit greater depth, and we can all take notes on that. This month, I'm actually going to be doing some podcasting stuff with them. They are hosting an event down at the library on September 20th called An Evening with Podcasters, with local podcasters. And it's myself, it's Ashley Feller from the St. Andrews Jezebel podcast, which is a kind of local arts and entertainment show here. A couple of other folks who do various types of shows. But we're all just going to get together and talk about podcasting and talk about why we do it and how it benefits us and how we get to meet listeners and all that kind of stuff. But again, it's just one more thing I can do right here in my backyard that doesn't cost me anything except for the 2 hours that it's going to take me to get over there and spend an hour on a panel and hang out with some folks and then come home. So really, really jacked about that. Other stuff looking forward to, edits continue on Last Argonaut. That is probably going to be the biggest book I have written since Mako, so that's going on 10 years now. This one's probably going to be well north of 100K. It's dual point of views, and that's really kind of what's taken up a lot of the meat. But I think it's definitely a better story for the dual POV approach. I kind of knew that from the beginning that it was going to have to be that way. And it's taken me a bit more time than I would like, but as you guys know on this show, man, this has been a busy year for us in the Malone house. We've had a lot of stuff going on, but little bit by little bit, we chip it away at it, and it's coming along. So to quote a line from a guy I admire a lot, Dave Ramsey, what's the best way to eat an elephant? one bite at a time. And so every morning I get up and I tack away at it, and I put another chapter in the books this morning and got that polished up, and I'm moving on. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Outside of books and publishing, like Rob said, man, it's football season. It's the most wonderful time of the year for a lot of us sports fans. The win for Florida State against LSU was obviously a lot of fun to watch, stressful down to the end. We let that game be closer than it should have in the end, but we scored the win, and that's definitely what the program needed. I'm proud of that. Also think there's a ton of stuff in there that they can point to say, got to clean this up, got to do this better, this needs work. I have a few personnel units that I'm a little bit concerned about, namely the secondary. I think Florida State's an 8-win team. I think that's very much on the table now. I think talk of 6 and 7 wins can go by the wayside now. This is a good 8-win, maybe even a 9-win team. And if you had told me coming into the year that we were going to look that sharp, particularly on offense, and that Jordan Travis was going to be that trustworthy at quarterback, and that we'd be 9 wins is on the table, that's a great year. And I'm proud to stand by, and I hope I get to watch that happen and play out. Elsewhere on college football, looks like Georgia is Georgia. Looks like Alabama is Alabama. That's going to be a war for the ages again. We'll see what Ohio State has to say about that. I think Clemson's probably going to take the ACC because they got a great defense. Still don't know that I believe at DJ at quarterback. I don't know if he'll make it the year, but I'll be watching. It was fun to watch NC State fall on their face. We've come to expect that out of Dave Doran coach teams up there in Raleigh. So interested to see how that plays out. And Dukies go out and hang 30 points on somebody, which was impressive. So college football is back. It is definitely one of my favorite times of the year. So I'll be busy doing that. But all right, guys, one thing I forgot to mention before we started this segment, and that is that it is presented by fine folks at the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. You're going to want to be following them every month, but especially this month for sci-fi fans. We got a big sci-fi book giveaway happening later on this month. So if you want to know how you can take part in that, go to iasfa.org, sign up for their newsletter, and that way you are never left out on the loop. We say this a lot because it's true, man. It doesn't matter if you're a reader or a writer. International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors is really where you need to be. They're a great place for writers to build community, pick up skills, network, hone your craft. For readers, they run giveaways and promotions every single month. So whether it's fantasy short stories, whether it's sci-fi novels, like they're constantly giving stuff away because their whole goal, their whole reason for being at IASFA is to connect reads with readers. That's what they're all about. And that's what we're all here to do. So again, that website is iasfa.org. That's iasfa.org. Make sure you slide over there, check them out, sign up for their newsletter, and you can stay up to date with what's going on. Thanks again to David Hayes for coming on Dudes in Hyperspace tonight. We really appreciate him. One more time, that's the afternoon Underdogs every day on ESPN Northwest Florida. You can find them online at espnpc.com. Thanks as always to Chris Kennedy Publishing for sponsoring the show. If you like this show, number of ways you can support it, guys. YouTubers, like those episodes, subscribe to the channels. That helps to bump us up through the rankings, get people to find us, get us a few more clicks. Apple listeners, Spotify listeners, Google listeners, folks who love the old school audio. You guys, you're near and dear to my heart. If it let you leave 5 stars in a review, we'd greatly appreciate it because again, that's what gets us rolling up through the algorithm. So make sure you check that out and we really appreciate it. Coming up on our next episode, guys, we're going to be doing our first mailbag episode. All right. That means it's going to be a whole show dedicated exclusively to you, the listener, and what you want to know about. So if you've got a question about one of our books, one of our characters, or heck, man, if you just want to wrap a little football because football season, that's the place. You can track us down on social media. You can also email the show at dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. We respond to all comers and all questions as best as we can. So fire them off. We definitely want to hear from you guys. Again, that's dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com, or you can track us down on social media, and we're all there on the Facebook and the Twitterverse. So on behalf of Rob Howe, Kevin Steverson, David Hayes, I am Ian J. Malone, and we'll see you next time on the Dudes in the Hyperspace podcast. See ya.